Bada bing, bada boom. Oh no. It's not supposed to come off. Alright, that's an excellent start. We're good. Just make sure, as usual, audio is working. And then we'll get to it. There has to be a better system for this. If anyone knows, please let me know. Basically, I just want to know that my audio is not stopped, because that happened to me before. Please? Yep, alright, we're good. Alright. Make sure everyone knows that we're live. And then we'll get going. I've got the candy board up. I've got the chat ready. Okay, in the chat on Twitch, I'm putting a link. This is the weekly questions form. If you have any questions that you would like me to answer on stream, you can put them into that form and I will answer them as soon as I see it. Maybe even the next week if it's between weeks. That same link will be in the YouTube description as always. And I think that's good enough for me. Let's get to it. So, for those who are new here, my name is Cheese Doodle. I am a member of the TagPro steering committee and development team. And for those who don't know what that is the group of people who are tasked with working on improving and planning, announcing all of that stuff for the game TagPro, which is a free-to-play 4v4 capture the flag game. You can find it online at tagpro.gg. It's live games 4v4, about 6 minutes long, right in your browser, no download or login required. So, what we do with this stream, it's kind of a summary of where things are for the game. It's starting off with the candy board in front of us right now is a list of requests we've received from the community, things that people want to be added to the game. So we're going to go through that piece by piece. But before that, I want to talk through the development changes from the last week, and I've got that up in front of me now. And after that, we are going to wrap up with a feature building session, which I haven't decided on the feature we're going to build this week. I'm stuck between two choices, so I'll be looking for some input on that later. We're either going to work on an integrated tournament feature or an integrated texture pack feature, and I'll give a little more detail on that when it's time to make a decision. So, starting with development updates, today is the 23rd, so I'm going to scroll back to the 16th. And I mentioned on stream last week that we are nearing the next release. We're probably looking at testing sometime next week and a release the week after that. When we get closer to releases, as you might recall, fewer features are being built because most of the features are going under review process and testing internally. So a lot of this stuff might sound familiar because I might have mentioned it before, but it is moving closer to actual completion. So, number one on the list, that was last week. There we go. Starting at there. I think I mentioned this one last week already, though. It's fixing to the chat filters. So the chat filters have been giving us some trouble. Steer me, cheese, specified. Sorry. So some fixes on the way for the chat filter. You might have still noticed that when you send a message, it blocks it when you said something that was innocuous, not a bad word. We've figured out why that's happening a little bit. I'm not going to go into detail so people don't dodge the filter, but there should be fewer and fewer false hits on the filter going forward. We have finally gone through the review process and merged in the scoreboard updates for the, leaderboard updates for the ranked leaderboards. If you look at the leaderboard now, it only shows you your tier and the players around you, and then it shows the top tier. Coming in the next release, you'll be able to click on any tier that you want and see all of the players in all of the tiers who are active, and that will be for historical seasons as well. So if you go back to season 0, you will be able to see the list of tiers and click on whichever one that you want, see all the players who were active in those tiers. So just information that we already had, we just weren't displaying it to everybody. There are reasons for that, but I think those reasons have now passed, so we're good to go for sharing that with everybody. So that should be good. In the next release, that did take a little bit of review back and forth. We did also fix at the same time the bug where if you have season 1 selected, you go to this tab, you come back, all of these turn yellow. That is fixed as well in the next release. We have an in-game indicator on the way, which is going to help display when you're actually connected to the joiner. which also underwent review process. That is, if you're in a game and you look in the top left corner of your screen, you'll see a little green arrow, which basically means that you're going to go from this game into another game when that game ends. If you click on that button, it will turn into a red circle, which says I do not want to go into another game when this game ends. But there was no display with that confirming or denying that you were currently being matched for other games. So we've added a little indicator so that if you're in casual and you are currently being matched to go into ranked, it will show you that. And if you are not being considered for ranked for any reason, it will not show you that icon. So you'll just know if you are actually in the joiner as you expect to be while you're playing. So that was under review. That went in. We've got some fixes to the win requirements for each tier. We noticed that, I think Name 333 reported this originally, a player who was in tier 1-2 had finished like 60 something wins at that level. So very much beyond the requirement for earning the challenger tier. It says 13 plus wins at or above challenger, in addition to 20 plus 10 plus 10. So he had earned all the wins that you should need to get that flare. We confirmed that, but he still didn't have the flare. And we figured out why. It's because that within the tier sorting, it was accidentally looking at games in the order they were finished and not games in the order of the tier that they are actually in. So it was looking at his most recent game saying that is not the tier 1-3 flare game, so it wasn't giving him the flare, even though he should have been well past it. I'm not explaining this well, but basically we were sorting things wrong, so players were not getting the flare at the top. That is fixed in the next release. That's what matters. We have something going on between seasons that's not really relevant, but just making sure that when we are in between seasons, the leaderboard still works properly. We have a fix on the way for game history, which is going to be relevant because in the next release, I've mentioned before, we have an incoming chart or graph on the profile. So it's going to show you, just like the old TPM site, like that graph that shows you how much your skill score has gone up and down during the season. We have that done, it's ready to go, but we realized that we have an old system that was capping the number of games saved in a ranked, hey Timmy, it was capping the number of ranked games that are saved during the season. So if you had played more than 500 games, it would stop saving your older records. So for the players who, they can't see it yet because we haven't put it out yet, but they had their chart and they played more than 500 games, it was only going to show their most recent 500 games. And it's important to note that is 500 between both queues, neutral flag and capture the flag. So for players like, I don't know, Voorhees maybe, does he have a lot of neutral flag as well? Yeah, so this player's well past 500 total games. All of their old records were being thrown out, so both of their graphs were going to be missing games. So we found a way to backfill those logs and then extend the cap on it so the players are not losing any games ever, and that will be permanent. So we're saving much, much more than just 500 games now. So that is good to go. Then we have some little back-end things that don't really matter to anybody. More review process for the chat filter stuff I mentioned. Then I think I mentioned before that we are fixing the view that we use. If you don't know what view is, it's basically just the thing that we use that displays stuff on your screen in a more reactive way. So a good example of this actually is the spectate page. So if you're on this page is obviously updating while you're watching it. View is a package that allows us to get those updates to you and change what you see without having to reload the page. An example of a page that does not use view is the groups page. If somebody makes a new group, you don't see that group until you refresh the page and then the group pops up, because this page is not reactive, this page is reactive. But the view that we were using is a bit out of date, and because of that, you might see over on the side here in the dev console that there is a, you are running view in development mode, make sure to turn on production mode. That's not a thing that we forgot to do, it's a thing that we cannot do with the package that we were using. So we've upgraded that to the newest version, fixed a couple bugs along the way, so you'll stop seeing that console error, and more importantly to me, you will stop seeing the that right there that pops up for every time you use the maps page. That's going to stop happening all the time as well. So that had to go through a review process. I'm still fixing that now, but it's just been a little bit of a back and forth on that. Can we show the top 32 on this ranked leaderboard? Asking for a friend named PTF. 32. I cannot show you the top 32 at this moment, sorry. I'm assuming that means that you are in 32nd place, Pass. But so yeah, so view is on its way. I think I've mentioned already the new player indicator went through review process. That's the one where in your games, if a player is new to TagPro, this is more relevant for casual than ranked, obviously, it will show a little leaf icon next to their name on the scoreboard. And that leaf basically says that this player is new to TagPro and you should not be a jerk to them because they might not know what's going on. So it's only going to be for a very short window. I think it's for like 50 games or so that you're marked as new. And moderators and monitors will have the ability to manually mark players who are not new. If we find like a Smurf in there, they're very clearly not new, but they're passing the check to be new. We have automated checks and manual checks. If they pass all the automated checks, we still have the ability to override it so you don't have Smurfs running around pretending to be new. So hopefully that will help with the in-game environment for casual and long-term just new player onboarding and things like that. So that's I'm excited for that one. We had a little bit of back and forth on what to actually show for the icon. We landed on the green leaf, but if people hate that, then we'll pick another one. So that is in. We had a tiny little bug that ended up having large implications for ranked that finally got merged in. This one was related to the very, very end of a ranked game. And what you might have noticed if you were playing, I think this is how I explained it last time. If you're in tier 1 and you see a game happening with a bunch of tier 1 and tier 2 players, sometimes that tier 1 and 2 game would finish and then you would get put into a game and the players who you were waiting for some reason were not in your game. Maybe you were matched down to tier 3 or tier 4. And we found what was happening was a timing issue where the game was closing its process down just after the client side, like your computer, decided to send you back to the joiner. The timing was just off enough that the server thought that you had chosen to click exit, even though you were automatically redirected back to the joiner. And that timing discrepancy resulted in the joiner not waiting for you anymore because it thought that you wanted to leave the queue. So we've moved all of the handling from that client side stuff onto the server side. So the server knows exactly who wanted to leave and who was forced to leave the game because the game is over and they're going back to the joiner. So it'll wait for everybody appropriately. You should never see somebody in a game not get waited for into the next game if they should have been in that game. So that was good to go. We've got a smaller feature on the way for groups. I think this was requested by Dope. I don't know if they're in the chat here, but if you're playing private games and you wanted to play a random map, but you wanted to only play random capture the flag maps, there's now going to be a random option for random CTF, random NF, or random all. So it'll pick from these maps according to map type if you want it to. That should go in soon. We've got more about the chart, just making sure that the skill score chart looks nice on your profile. Just a little bit of back and forth on how to do that. We've got changes to the void timer. That's a big one. So I think I've mentioned this on stream. We talked about a couple possible solutions for this one with players who are not in the game at the very start of the game and then join a little bit too late. So the game doesn't void, but their team is still losing by the time they come back. Or players who do join the game, but they're AFK, they get kicked, then the game voids, but the time it takes for them to go AFK, get kicked, for the void timer to kick in, and for the game to actually void is like 40 something seconds. And by then it's like a 3-0 game. And maybe that person comes back and now the game's basically lost. So all we're doing is we're shortening all of those timers so it all happens a little bit quicker. So if you have trouble connecting to the game, there is still a grace period for you to connect to the game. It's not like you're not going to be able to get in, but if you're taking more than like 30 seconds, at that point, the game is kind of over. I'm exaggerating, but more often than not, that's a bad situation. So we'd rather just void that game and not have it happen versus all of the problems that are stemming from that problem. I can't wait for Eggball, says Russ. Okay. When are we adding compatibility for Bank of America? I don't know if we're planning to do that, but I'll let you know. All right. Other thing, minigame pre-seconds. I think I mentioned last week that we were reducing that down to 5 seconds from the current 20 seconds. That is not happening anymore, but we are shortening it to 10 seconds. And the reason we decided on 10 seconds and not 5 seconds was because if you go to 5 seconds, you don't get the map preview and then the zoom in. You just start zoomed in. And we wanted players to be able to see the full map before they actually start on that map, especially for mini games where you might not know the map very well. So we decided 10 seconds was more appropriate for that. And that was merged in a little bit ago. A little bit more about the view back and forth. Launcher overtime clock. I actually don't know what this is. overtime clock. Oh, that's right. It was in launcher pages. If you are in a launcher and you notice sometimes you're looking at the countdown, it counts all the way down to whatever for the map voting. Then it says a message, there's a player in overtime, finding them a substitute and then launching. But sometimes it'll bounce between that message and the countdown will keep counting down, but it keeps like flipping weirdly between them. And then it ends the timer, but then the game doesn't launch and it takes an extra like 10, 15 seconds to launch. And it's just confusing and annoying. And sometimes people think that it broke or that they're not going to get into their game. It sometimes launches, it sometimes voids. It's hard to tell. That whole situation has been fixed. And I'm not going to bother explaining what it was. Just, it's fixed. It's going to be good to go after this release. Oh, you were making a Bofa joke. Got it. Okay. Nicely done. Yeah, so that's done. We got the selectable tiers. Like I mentioned before, that's just a little bit more review on that one for the leaderboard. More review, more review. Merging things in. Sorry, like I said, a lot of this is just discussion and then finalizing little things. More of that. Come on. In-game indicator review. Oh, I think I mentioned this one already, right? The MTC, they have a way of seeing the current maps in the ranked rotation and figuring out what their voting rates are. So if two maps are head-to-head, one map's picked more than the other, they can get the stats for each map, and each map's head-to-head for every other map. We found that at the start of the season, that was accidentally pulling in data from the previous season, so that the Season 0 stats were bleeding into the Season 1 stats. We just fixed that so they only get per season stats. It doesn't go into the old data. That got finalized and merged. More about the indicator. More about the view thing. A fix to the MTC's bot so that that bot can manually adjust the ranked rotation. Right now, the MTC just sends me a link or a list of all the maps that they want, and I put it in manually, which sucks. So they're going to have the ability to just upload directly, adding and removing for whatever they want, which is what it should be. So I'm having trouble reading what some of these actually are. Return to spectate to queue or spectate page. Oh, I think this was a request that we got. It was if you are spectating a game, so maybe you go to the spectate page and you watch a game and you decide, I don't actually want to watch this game, like it's cool or whatever, but I want to go back. So when you're spectating, you can click exit, you have to go back to here, you can click spectate again, it's fine. But if you are in the queue, say you're in the ranked queue and you've been waiting for 5-10 minutes and you wanted to spectate a game while that was happening, but you decided you didn't actually want to watch that that game that you were spectating anymore, if you click the exit button, you go back to the home page, which works, but you lose your queue spot. So if somebody was waiting longer than you, or sorry, waiting for less time than you were, but you leave and come back, now they've been waiting for more time than you are. So you lose your spot in the queue essentially when you do that. So we've given the option now to go back to just the joiner. So you're not spectating that game anymore, but you don't lose your spot while you were waiting. So that got finalized. That should go in soon. More discussion about the new player indicator. More. This is an older thing that I mentioned. There's a full refactor of the post-game stat recording. Just everything that happens after a game ends to take your stats and put them in the database and put them on the leaderboard and all that has been updated to be a little bit cleaner because it was a bit bloated based on the number of edits that had to go through during Season 0 while we were changing what we wanted to do and how we wanted things to look and how we wanted to actually adjust the scores and all that. It became a bit of a Frankenstein's monster situation, so we just went through and cleaned up the whole thing, which was nice. And then that brings us to yesterday, where we just did a little bit more cleanup of the joiner code, finalized the view thing, and the in-game indicator. Boom, that brings us to today. So I have a couple of pings, make sure they're not important. Yeah, so that's good. which brings us over to the candy board now. So like before, I mentioned there's a link in the chat right now. It should be pinned. If you have any questions that you'd like me to answer about development stuff, feel free to submit a question. But otherwise, we're going to head over to the candy board and talk through. We only got 3 requests this week, so let's see what these are. Save settings on logout. Every time I have to log back in or play from a new location, I have to remember to change my tile respawn warnings back to pizza. Is it possible to just have these save upon logout? If I miss one more boost timing because I'm playing with Blink, I might cry. So this is a tricky one because, if I'm not mistaken, all of these settings are living in cookies right now. So if you... Oh gosh, I forget what this is. This is not my expertise at all. Is it over here? Yeah, I don't feel like going through that. So yeah, so your settings here live on your computer. It does not live on your account. And that's not true for all of them. Some of them, like the Finish All Games, live in your profile. But some of these settings are only computer specific. So if I log into the same account on a different computer, it's the same account. I still have my reserve name and everything, but some of these settings are not going to pull through to that account because the cookies that I have only exist in this browser. They don't exist on my other computer. So respawn warnings, I believe, is one of those settings, which is why you're seeing when you go to a new location, you lose it. Now, logging back in should not cause that to happen. If you're on the same computer, you log out, you log back in, you should still have the same cookies. So that is a little bit confusing. Anyone who's having trouble visualizing that, if you've helped us test on TagPro Secret before, you might remember that if you changed any settings there, like your texture pack or anything like that, and then you went back to actual TagPro, you'll notice those same settings did change because they use the same cookies for testing. But it's a different database, which is why you had a different account. So it's a little strange, but that's how cookies work. So this should not happen. So I'm just going to clarify this. To clarify, does this happen when you log out and back in on the same computer? This is expected behavior when you play from a new device. Settings live in browser cookies, which are device specific. But should not happen when you stay on the same computer. And we'll see what they say to that. Add a group setting that makes Mars balls unmovable. I think we have a setting for this already. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Like an anchored Mars ball or something like that. Yes, add a Mars ball option to be locked in place instead of free range. Yeah, be immobile, so when selected, they're locked in the same location. Bouncing remains unchanged, but it's a static tile. And the name of this was Mars Ball Improvements. See if I can find that here. Yep, fixed position, non-scoring option. So I'm gonna merge this into that. Oh, wait, there's a second setting here. I gotta read. Also add a setting to make them more bouncy or less bouncy. Less bouncy would be cool because it will absorb momentum. That's just called a wall. Allow more than 2. That's a rendering issue that would get super laggy. Is there a reason to have them in cookies instead of stored server side? How does the concept of having them work if the game is on Steam? Those are 2 very good questions. Let me merge this because I think we can still look at this when it gets merged in. Yeah, so that still shows up, so we can still go through that when we get back to this ticket. So, Grant, is there a reason to have them in cookies? I think the reason they're in cookies is because they have always been in cookies. I don't think that was a conscious choice that we made. I think that was a decision made by Lucky Spammer back in 2013-ish, if I had to guess. So there's no, I mean, anything that's in cookies could theoretically be in the profile. There are some best practices floating around that Bash might have some more opinions on than I would. Something to do with like rendering options or something are more device specific, because if you have two different devices and you want to have different settings on the two devices because it's a different device, it's something to do with that. I'm not explaining that very well, but I think that is why settings that change how things look on your screen sometimes default to cookies so that different screens can have their own choices, basically. Whereas if you have the same stuff on the profile, now you log into that new device and it's showing stuff that might work for your other screen, but not for this device on this screen. I think that's where it comes from. I'm not sure that's a reason that we can't change this. I just want to make sure I'm understanding what the problem is from them first. How does the concept of having settings and cookies work when the game is on Steam? That is a very good question that I don't actually have an answer to, but I'm going to make a note because I would like to discuss that more. Because when you're on Steam, you are still using your computer, obviously, and the way that Electron apps work, I think it's bundling a browser essentially. So if you go to like Discord's actually a good example of this. Discord does actually have dev tools because it's a wrapped browser, but it doesn't look like a wrapped browser. It looks like Discord. So I feel like we could probably still access that information if it's, I'm not sure, because it has to be like Chrome based. If you have Chrome based settings, you have Firefox based settings, you would have to be using the same. There are people out there who would know the answer to this immediately. I am not one of them. I'm going to look into this. I'm writing a note to the future group right now because I would like to look into this more. Okay, thank you. Didn't know if it was a conscious choice or not, and there's no good reason. Yeah, if there's no good reason, I mean, it makes sense to me to move them into the profile settings if that's the easiest solution to that. You could also, yeah, I'm not going to get into the details of that. Yes, I think you're on the right track in terms of that is a good solution if what you're describing is a problem. So I'll get back to you on that, and we'll go from there. So, gate stats. Perhaps include pop stats or points for tags by gate. Player on button gets credits. Perhaps big bonus for FC return by gate. I thought that we already do this. Do we not? I'm pretty sure that gates already give you a tag if you're... You need a map with a gate. Moonbase, that has gates. Okay, I need pops. Let's go. Any pops on gates? Nope. Nope. Yes, okay. So let's look at Tom Brady's stats while we go into the gate here. Tom Brady. Oh wait, I didn't have a flag. I gotta look in the right place. Tom Brady tags. Did I? Wait, where'd it go? No. Wait, no, 3. Okay, yeah, he went to 3. Yeah, okay. Tag gates give tags. That's already a thing. Gates currently award tags and returns to the button holder. So we'll close that up. Oh, and we have Nana right here, aka Dayman, aka dubbed me. Suggested a long time ago, I searched and didn't see. Maybe. Yeah, but not a bad thing to ask for, but we already did that. So nicely done. So that's it for candy board stuff, but I did realize last night when I was looking through the candy board that there are people who respond to these things, and I have not been responding back to their responses. So I found that if I go here, I can look at people responding to the things that I've said. So we're going to take a moment and answer all the people I've been ignoring. We're going to start, I don't know if I want to go that far back. Maybe, I don't know. Let's go to about here. Arbitrary number. Nope. Bash, that's not us. Okay, that's not relevant. That's closed. That's the same closed one. I'm not going to do bug reports. Let's do feature requests. Okay, I got to read this. What's this all caps thing going on? Oh, okay, just so true. The default should be to receive the notification. Players can opt out. That is not allowed. Opt out notifications are not allowed by modern browsers for security reasons. All sounds, banners, etc. need to be opt-in, or they will be blocked automatically. Okay, that's the same all caps one. I wish I could hit a button and gate all the corrupt politicians. Okay. It opens a pop-up asking for permissions. No. Yes, it does. But Kaiser's saying that instead of that, it should just automatically send you notifications, and you can't do that. And you should be glad that you can't do that, because every site that you ever went to would be spamming the hell out of you if that was allowed. So why not auto up to everyone? Yeah, so just think about if you go to a site right now, say you go to a blog that you were reading, and all of a sudden it starts screaming at you, and you're like, what is that? And you realize it's a notification that you've been automatically opted in for. You're going to be pretty upset with that website. So browsers decided that instead of letting websites do that, they have to ask for your permission before they can give you notifications. And that's for all modern browsers do that now. You can't just start sending people banners and updates and all that are a bit intrusive. So we don't want to break that rule, because then they will just shut down all of our notifications and you won't get anything, even if you opt in. So let's go. I'm not going to respond to Bash because I know what he's thinking already. Why not ask permission for everyone? No, we do that. We when you get into the site, when you make an account, it asks you for permission up here. It says, "Can I give you notifications?" So we already do that. That's a prompt that comes up. There is a ticket open to offer that prompt again after somebody voids a game. That might have been the ticket we were actually responding to just then. But yes, that is a thing that we do, because like you said, we want people to get those notifications. We just want to make sure that they actually want those before we force them to have that. So you're thinking the right things. Let's see. Add no kiss to tier 1 games. Timo says agreed. Yeah, so I think this still holds true. Cheese man. Thanks, Kohler. Let's see, NICU. Yep, that's correct. All right, so I guess none of these were super pressing, but I want to make sure there was nothing I was ignoring here. Maps rated by difficulty is an interesting premise. Oh, Grant, I actually have an answer for you from Bash already about the settings. The Steam release will use a browser engine called Electron, we knew that, which has full support for cookies. So your cookie-based settings will be tied to your Steam client, and you'll have to reset those. So to put that in layman terms, just for everybody in case, you go to the website, TagPro, you select all of your settings. If you go to your profile, you can pick whatever you want, including like the ticket that we just looked at was for respawn indicators. So I click that, and I have this every time I use this browser and I play TagPro, I will have blinker indicators. But if I, on the same computer, opened up Firefox and I tried to play TagPro, I could log into the same account. I could have all of my same reserve name and flare and all that, but I would have to reselect the tile respawn warnings because that's a different browser with its own cookies. Now, Steam would operate as a third browser. So I would boot up Steam, I could log into my account, I can still play as ChooseDoodle with all my flares, but in Steam, I would need to click that I also want the blinker indicators for Steam. And now every time I use Steam, it would keep those settings for me. So it would not save your settings from the browser to Steam, but you would be able to select your new settings on Steam and it would work there indefinitely. So I think that makes sense. For players who are already playing the game on the browser, I think it still might be nice, like you're saying, to have that port over, but for new players, it definitely would not impact their experience in any way, which is good. So Still something we can talk about or look into a little bit more, but that's a answer that makes sense, which is nice. So a couple more here. I think we talked about this one last week. Is this just 4 Toppy alternate accounts responding to himself? Toppy, if you're here, I want you to admit to this if this was you. Cheese Doodle cheats on the Wordle. What? I failed the Wordle like 3 days ago. Cheats on the Wordle. I'm like second to worst in the whole group. That's unbelievable slander. Unbelievable. All right. All of those comments are the same thing. And then this is the thing I just mentioned is in progress now, where you can go back to the joiner. So what does it say now? I have an additional thought. Why not just make the exit button for minigames and spectate always take you back to the joiner? Yeah, so that's a good question. I had the same thought. The reason we decided not to go that way, it's more of a best practices from a UI perspective. So if I'm watching a game, doesn't matter what the game is, and you think about what you have in the top left corner, you have an exit button. Now that exit button has been there for a very long time. That exit button also exists if I am playing in a private game. When you click that exit button, you go back to the home page. If I am in a game and I am playing by myself in a private game, that same exit button exists while I'm in this game. If I press that exit button, I know that I go back to my group. So the challenge is that if you add a third functionality for that same button, you kind of muddy the meaning of what that button is. Because if I have been spectating a game while in matchmaking, so I'm queued for ranked, I'm spectating a game, and I click exit, people know that that button is leaving the queue. It's taking them out of the game they are in. It's taking them back to the homepage. If you change that button and say, okay, the exit button, actually now it takes you back to the joiner, you have changed what the button does, even though that same button exists in different places doing different things. So to back up a little bit, exit button exists when you're playing a game, exit button exists when you're spectating a game. If both of those buttons do 2 different things, one takes you back to the homepage, one takes you back to the joiner, that is bad practice because it's confusing for front-end users. That is just what I've been told. I understand where you're coming from. That was my first thought too, but that is the reason we have not gone that route. It's better to keep buttons working the same way that it's expected, doing the same thing in all settings if possible, and then adding in other options to do different things whenever you can. So what we're going to do for that is create a little icon that is slightly different in the same place, not like right next to it, but in the same general part of the screen that will tell you, okay, I want to go back to the joiner versus I want to go back to the home page. Because maybe you are spectating and you do want to leave the queue. Maybe you don't want to go back to the joiner and you'd rather just be done with everything on the site. You want to just go back to the home page. You want to have the option to do that still. So you don't want to remove that functionality in the process of adding this other functionality either. That's kind of the whole conversation summarized succinctly, hopefully. But maybe just rambling. I don't know. Giving myself an alibi. Yeah, totally. I have 1 Wordle in 1 turn. I don't buy it. Not buying it, Nanner. All right, so that is good enough for the candy board. Again, we are running out of time on the candy board. We've got 1 week left before they end our free trial. We still don't know what that means. Best we can tell, the candy board will continue to exist. Players can continue to post, but I will lose access to this whole view where I can update comments and stuff. So if that happens while we're building the replacement, we're probably just going to go through the same process, but as myself from the feedback tab, because I can still search by new and I can still like go into tickets and I can still say stuff. I just can't add tickets to them. So I'll go and say, oh, this is under review. And then I'll make whatever comment I wanted to make. And it's good enough probably until we can get an integrated replacement. But hopefully that's not what that means and maybe it'll keep working. I don't really know. We'll find out together. So that's a fair warning there. Which brings us to our final section of the day, which is the feature building session. So I need some opinions here because we have 2 different options. Oh, actually, I got a question on the anonymous form, so let's talk about that real quick. I believe a while ago there was a plan for racing leaderboards and such. Is that still planned? Is there any progress? Let's talk about that for a minute, because that's actually something I like a lot and I want to have. So there are 2 different parts of this answer. Let me pull up the right document first. I remember we talked about this on stream a while ago. There it is. Yes, okay. So it's sort of racing. It's a little bit more than that though. We call it time trial leaderboards. And this is, I think, wait, is this the right document? Let me just make sure I have the right. No, this is the wrong document. Where's the one that talks about gravity stuff? Shoot. Okay, I'll just talk about it for a minute while I'm looking for this. So yes, it's still planned. To answer the initial question, is there any progress? No, there is no progress yet. So what that project is, it's a series of maps and /or challenges that would be in the form of a map. And for each of those maps that are released, you have a list of players who have finished that map and then how long it took them to finish it. So I think for the racing maps, it was going to be the time that it took for them to complete 3 laps around the map. I think that was modified to just be the time for them to complete a single lap, although I'm not 100% on that, so don't take my word at face value there. In addition to the racing maps, we were also going to add gravity maps to that challenge so that it's the same goal. You have to get to the end, you have to cap, you have to do whatever, but it's not laps around a track. It's a vertical tower or whatever. It can go in any direction, but that's the most common one. And then for all of those finishers, your time is immediately populated to a leaderboard. And then if you're at the top of the leaderboard, you earn a flare for being at the top of that leaderboard. You have to be like, what was it? It's like the first place in any map or be above a certain standard for a certain number of maps. I really wish I could find this document because it had more details about it. Did I put this on the Miro board? No, I'm thinking. Let's see. Yes, okay, that was on the Miro board. So if you haven't seen this before, person who asked the question, this is the Miro board. We put this together on stream 3 or 4 weeks ago now, and it had 3 different groups of features that we're planning: big release cornerstones, larger things that we're putting together, QOL stuff broken into visual audio fixes, informational updates, and then functional changes to the site, high, medium, and low priority, and then just fun things to add but that aren't necessarily the highest of priority. So at the very top of that list is the time trials leaderboard, and it looks like the ticket here is the same one that I was looking at here, which has the wrong document linked, so I'm gonna have to hunt that down. But the actual answer to your question is that yes, that is still planned. It's a high priority thing. I really want this to be added to the game because I feel like it's a corner of the community that we don't really promote enough as a game, because it's fun. For starters, that's an easy sell, but it's also it drives a certain level of engagement and conversation and rivalry, even a little bit. It allows players to play at quiet hours. Like if you play at a weird time because maybe you're a West Coast person who likes to stay up till 1 a.m. By that time, pubs are dead. So maybe you want to do something by yourself that's still fun and still can be social and challenging. Time trials are an excellent example of a thing you can do. So that can kind of bring some life, breathe some air into those quieter hours of the day to maybe start to be a foothold for the actual game to pick up on and start to play from. You can also do the same idea for low population regions, like for Oceania or European players, to be able to play a game on their actual home server with good ping and feel how it feels to actually play the game. A lot better experience than playing on 300 ping on US Central trying to fight against people who live 10 miles from the server. So it does a lot of things that are cool, and also on its own is just a nice thing to have. So I would like that to happen, hopefully not too far in the future. It's not at the very, very top of the list, but it is very much on my radar, and hopefully we can get that in the future. So will be interesting to see how Steam affects the game. Really seems like any hardcore gamer should be playing TagPro. Well, we're a little biased here, but I'm inclined to agree. Okay. Where was I going from here? Feature building, that's right. So 2 different options that we're going to work on this week. We only have about 45 minutes for this one, so I'm opinions in the chat. Would you like to work on an integrated tournament feature? And I don't have any more details to give because I haven't thought about it more than that. Or would you like to work on an integrated texture pack builder? And the only other detail I can provide on that is that it would be an upgrade on the current texture pack selector, where instead of importing custom packs, you could edit them directly on the site and make them look like whatever you want to. And the larger argument for that is that if you have it fully integrated to the degree of personalized texture packs, I'll get to that in a second, Grant, that allows you to add new tile types with much better accuracy and in integration with the existing texture packs. Because you have people out there with custom texture packs, it's kind of hard for us to guess what tile type would look good with their texture pack. You don't have the ability to do that with the current setup. So texture packs, one thing, and then tournaments would kind of be the next step beyond ranked matchmaking. So obviously you have a ranked system. It's a higher level of competitive play. It's not really the same thing as a league, but it's still a fun thing for high level players. So where do high level players want to go from there? They would probably, well, I'm speaking for them, I shouldn't do that, but if you want high level competition, the next step above just a ranked system that you can queue up whenever would be a scheduled tournament system. So you join up and say, signups are open for the next half hour. If we get to 32 people, we're gonna have an 8-team tournament. Winner gets whatever we decide it would be later. So you can do something like that, which might be more of a feature that you tie into the homepage calendar, where you can schedule those kinds of things so people know that they're coming. That would be the other option. So you got that, and you got texture packs. Those are the two options for today. I've got one point in the chat from Scorch for texture packs. Grant says that tournaments are giving him a headache thinking about ghosting and subs. That is the crux of all tournament running in my experience. If those who don't know, I ran the Masters tournament during COVID, and it was a absolute nightmare to get off the ground. But once it got going, it was actually quite fun. Hopefully people here had a good time with that too. But man, I'm just thinking back to that. That was just a crazy time. Locked in your house. Like, screw it, I'm gonna make the biggest tournament ever and crash Dallas. Why not? That's kind of how all this started. That was my big thing to get going. But anyway, in the absence of other votes, we're leaning toward texture packs right now. If anyone wants to sway that, you better speak up soon. Another vote in from Timmy for texture packs, so that settles it. Texture packs it is. Let me just get a document up and running. So like I mentioned, I haven't really thought through the intricate details of this. That's kind of what the goal of the stream is going to be. And it's okay if we don't completely finalize this, but what I would like to think through, and Grant mentioned this earlier as well, I don't know what the other option was. I'm making a TikTok. That's my social media manager. So for those who don't know, something very important to this conversation is going to be Choxy's TP Themer. And you can find that at jdw.me/tpthemer. I don't think you can see the URL because my face is in the way. Can I move that? I can. It's probably still too zoomed out, but it's there now if you want to see it. So this is Choxy's TP Themer. Whoops, what have I done? Okay, I'm back. What it does is it has a list of most, not all, but most texture packs that the game has been integrated with. So these are the texture packs that you will find if you go to the texture packs list, the available packs. Most of these are present in this site. So I think for the sake of this conversation, it does help to know what a texture pack is. Texture packs and maps, the more you look into it, the more you realize how much of an absolute mess they are. It's honestly a shock that they work at all. It's pretty impressive that they do, what Lucky was able to do with some stray lines of code. But basically what a texture pack is, it's the instruction for the game for how to render each tile. So a tile, just to give an easy example, is what you would think of. Like, this is a tile, it's a floor tile. This is a red team tile. This is a blue team tile. All of those items are a specific size at a specific index on this larger PNG image. So what Choxy's TP Themer does is it isolates each of those tiles and allows you to pick the ones that you want into your final tile type. And texture packs are more than just your tiles. The tiles is this image, but there's also your speed pads, which are your boosts. You have portals, you have splats, gravity wells, and Mars balls. But I don't think Mars balls are integrated because they are part of the tile pack here. I'm not going to get into that right now. So what Choxy's TP Themer does is it allows you to take just, say, the flags of 24K and pop them in to a new texture pack. So it's a mix and match basically of existing texture packs to make your own based off of ones that already exist. So this is very cool because it gives you a little bit more freedom if you didn't want to go in and edit your own texture pack pixel by pixel, because it's really important to some players to have a pixel perfect texture pack. And if you are not using something like this, you might mess that up and you might have an inaccurate render, because there's nothing in TagPro stopping your ball from looking like something that is incorrect. A great example of that would be the circle jerk texture pack over here, which is, in my opinion, extremely funny, but obviously not accurate to the shape of actual anything in the game. Like, that's not the number of tiles wide that a spike is. That's not the shape of a ball. Like, these are all inaccurate, but that's kind of the point. But there's nothing stopping no, it's not. There's nothing stopping you from doing the same thing to a different degree with your own texture pack. So one of the core things that we need to focus on is one of the core things we need to focus on is allowing players to adhere to those pixel perfect standards or to ignore them. But it has to be clear which side of that conversation a player wants to be on, because maybe they have just been playing the game forever. They know how big a boost is. They don't care. They just want it to look nice. I don't know who that would be, but you want them to be able to pick a size that is wrong if they want that, but also allow them to pick a size that is right if that's what they want as well. And the more I think about this, the larger I think this might be. So we're probably not going to get through all of this today, but we're just going to kind of get the framework started for what this would look like. But let's back up for a moment and talk about what we're actually proposing here. So you've got your list of packs that are default packs. You've got your import custom. So if you went to Choxy's TP Themer and you said, okay, this is perfect, I love it, I want this to be used in TagPro, you would go down and you would, no, you wouldn't go down, sorry. You would just right click and you would save this image as, and it would download that PNG. You would take that PNG over to the texture pack tab. Nope, backing up again. You would take that over to a site like Imgur and you would upload it to Imgur. And then from Imgur, you would be able to take the link of that. So let's just do that whole process here, just so everyone knows what I'm talking about. Save image as new tile or whatever. You guys can't see this, sorry, it's just a saving model. And then you would go to Imgur and you would upload it. And then you would take this and you would get share links and you would copy the, whoops, where is it? That's the one you want, the i.imgur, and you would paste it in here. And now you would see that your tiles have been updated to the image that you had there. Oh, is there? Oh, look at that, upload to Imgur. Yeah, so maybe do that instead. But basically, you get it to Imgur's house somewhere, some way, somehow, and then you can use that same tile in TagPro. That's what happens when you are using a custom texture pack. So to ease that process, what we're proposing is that you take this editor and you integrate it directly with the site. So for those who make their own custom texture packs, they usually use an image editor, like your paint.net kind of thing is what I use. I think I've shown this on stream a couple of times, but it allows you to take a PNG and customize each pixel of that PNG so that it looks like what you want it to. Then you can do the same thing, save it, upload to Imgur, put it into the tiles here. So it's doable. It's more accessible than just forcing people to pick from available packs, but it's not really that accessible if you don't know how to do any of the things that I just showed you. And if you want a customizable one, that barrier is even higher. So what we're really trying to do is lower the barrier for implementing customizable texture packs. And then, yes, so the challenge beyond that is that even though the barrier wants to be lower, you don't want to leave people without support for creating a texture pack that actually works. So lower the barrier, but provide guardrails so that the texture pack created is still viable. And that's where the question about pixel perfect comes in. And that is kind of a little tricky because there are different sizes for tiles. So we talked about the regular tile already, their floor tile. That is a 40 pixel by 40 pixel tile. That is true for all texture packs. You cannot change that, because if you do, your floor is gonna have holes in it. It's gonna have gaps between the tiles that aren't gonna look right, or they're not gonna mesh with like your team tiles, for example. But you also have a ball, and a ball is also a 40 by 40 image, but it's a circle inside of a 40 by 40 image with a transparent edge. So you have to know which tiles are a certain size. Like the ball is larger than a bomb. I think people know that. That's why if you sit on a bomb tile before it spawns, somebody else cannot explode that bomb because you are covering it, because of the difference in size between those two tiles. So for all of these tiles, including Mars balls, buttons are smaller, Mars balls are larger. You need to know what tile you are editing and then how large that would be. So I think that at the core, you need to keep 38 pixels in diameter, unless you're playing with, does he not have circle jerk here? That's so disappointing. Man, oh no, it's right there. I missed it. There you are. You beautiful. All right. Is that Lucky Spammer's face? It is. That's awesome. Yeah, so what you need to know when you're editing it is what tile are you actually editing. So it can't just be a free range editor where you just have all of these just giant textures and you're just saying color and whatever pixels you want. That's not going to work. It would have to be tile specific. So I think what we need to do is break it down into tiles down into size, and then, no, not size, into unique types by size. So you'd have a list of floor tiles, which is your floor tile, team tile. Kind of brilliant. It is brilliant. And then you need to allow people to edit them. Oh, gate tiles, empty gate tiles as well. Oh gosh. I can't be looking at this though for tiles. So we've got gates, floors, oh, end zones. That's the last one. And I think what you need to do here is allow people to toggle pixel perfect or not pixel perfect, so that it gives them the correct size for each of those tiles. I feel like I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, but I'm going to write it down anyway. Mix and match from existing asset. I'm saying you could use that as a starting point, but maybe you want to edit it, but you don't have an editor and don't know how to use that editor, and you don't want to go through the whole Imgur process. How do you give them the ability to edit it directly in the site? And the benefit of that is that you can share those a lot easier between players. And if we add new tile types, now you have access to what those textures are and the ability to make a new tile out of them is kind of where I'm going with that. So if you look at all of these, like these are all the texture packs that we actually have saved on the site. People have their own, but we don't have access to them because it's on the client. And you got starred out by my paint.net. a baby, yeah, like a guardrailed version of it. Like I think with Paint.net, the problem is that it's, or GIMP or anything like that, those are complex programs that people use, but they don't, like they do so much more than we need them to do. You literally just need to be able to edit the color of pixels. That's it. You don't need to figure out the shape. You don't need to figure out how they all come together, the index or anything like that. I want to remove all of those considerations and just say, if you want to edit this tile, what do you want this tile to look like? Make whatever you want, save it, move on. If you think that's a thing we don't need to do, I'm okay having that conversation too. But I feel like texture packs are like a thing that's pretty important because everyone uses one and everyone has a personal preference for what they look like. But very few players feel like they have the ability to actually customize that to their own liking. It's kind of, you're forced into a box with the options that are given to you. Like sometimes I'm looking around and I want a darker texture pack, and I look at the couple dark ones. I'm like, I'm not really feeling any of these right now. So I would want to, I want to take sparkle maybe, but I would want to remove these little white dots. I don't like that little border that they have. It's a bigger feature than you originally thought. That's what I said. We might not get through the whole thing today. I just kind of want to get the conversation started and see where we end up. And I can see the viewers dropping because nobody else wants to talk about this, but that's okay. I'm interested. So toggle for tile type to enforce pixel perfect. Per tile. Per tile, which will force all external pixels to be completely transparent. So then you have list of round tiles, you have the ball, you have the flag. I think the spike is a different size than the ball, I hope. Spikes and bombs are the same size, maybe? Now I'm doubting myself. Power-ups, bombs, and boosts are all the same size? I should have looked this up before I started. I wish I had like a flaccid trip in here to back me up on this. I guess it doesn't really matter for the purposes of what we're talking about here, but breaking it up by size, and then within each size, allowing the player to edit. Fine. I'm just going to put etc. for now. Good enough. So where does this actually live? I think it would have to be another tab, additional tab, because you wouldn't want to remove the functionality of this either. Like some people have their flow and they like this and it works. So you'd have to have available packs, import custom, and then create custom probably would be the third one. Create custom, and then there's a spot in the Reddit wiki. Thank you. Let me pull that up real quick. Is it in modding? Texture packs? Yeah, there we go. Boom. Okay, yeah, so the ball is slightly bigger than the bomb. Oh, the spike is different size. What do you know? Okay, yeah, flag and power up and bomb are all the same size. That's good. Boost, portal. Okay, yeah, so those are all 30. Interesting, the spike is smaller. I didn't realize that. But yeah, anyway, so you'd have all of those. And, oops. Create custom. And then inside of that tab, you have your current texture pack displayed. I think we'd also probably want to go ahead and change I mean, would you keep this? Because I'm thinking about if you're individualizing, saying you want to change your 45 tile and you want that to have a different style from your block tile. Is that a thing that you would want to do per tile. I think you kind of have to do it per tile, because if we're adding a custom, I think my problem right now is I'm thinking about extra tile types. That whole conversation that we had. If you want players to have a texture pack and modify that texture pack to whatever they want, but then also allow yourself to add in new shapes without having to re-render everything, you need those shapes to somehow exist in this mess so that they can be picked out. And I don't know if we can really future-proof that in a way that is sustainable forever. Like you're always going to think of a different shape that doesn't exist in here. So I think I'm struggling with the end goal of that part of it. This might end up being something we decide is not worth the effort at the end of the day, but I'm not done quite yet. Current texture pack displayed. Can I rephrase? So say, for example, there's a request open right now to add a peg tile type, and the peg is supposed to be the same size as a button, which is 16 pixels in diameter. And say you want that peg to be the same design as your wall tile. So you want it to be that same gray, but it should have a little bit of an outline to it so that it's like obviously the end of the tile type. How do you make one of those out of this center image if you haven't already thought about what that tile type is? And that's why we can't add new tile types right now, because every tile type that we add would have to go in with the default texture, and then the whole premise of what texture packs is would have to be rewritten to integrate that peg tile type. Every single texture pack that exists would have to have a modified image to have the peg in there, or it would have to accept that it has the default, which might clash horribly with whatever texture pack you're using. Like if you're using a darker texture pack and it's like a light gray or whatever, it might look terrible, but it's going to be all over the place if it's a new tile type. So the larger goal, the reason I kind of thought of this idea to work on in the first place, is that if you can somehow make an editor that has all of their different tile types. Well, that's what I'm saying, G-Man. That's what I'm trying to say, is how can it be changed to fit your pack if the texture pack needs to be completely rebuilt every time we add a new tile? This image in front of me right now does not work if we add a peg tile type. You would need to modify all of these to add in a peg. But if you had an integrated customizable texture pack selector where you can make your own tile types, now we can say, okay, you've got your texture pack, you only have the default peg, but instead of needing to rebuild all of these PNGs, you can just go to this tab on your profile and make the peg look however you want it to look according to your own texture pack. So it's giving people a staging ground to make those new tiles look the way that they want them to look without having to go through this arduous process of downloading a GIMP or a paint.net or finding out somebody else who's made one that they like and uploading it to Imgur to then put it in. Like, it's too many steps to force players to go through in the process of adding a tile type. Whereas if we could just give them a tab and say, click a button here, make it look like you want it to look, and be done, that's a much, much lower barrier for players to be hurdling over. In-house, yeah, that's kind of the... Right, so it'll use it until you update it, but there is no way to update it right now, Grant. That's my problem, is that like you'd need to wait until Choxy decides to add in every single texture pack with a peg if you want to update it, if you don't know how to do that. So you're resigning everybody who doesn't use a classic texture pack to having this ugly thing on their screen, or maybe multiple ugly things if we add more than one tile, until forever. Like, how does that end? So we're kind of forced into a box with this system, and that's the real problem that I'm trying to address here through this solution here. Yeah, so we're working through step one of that two-step process, G-Man. We're saying, how do you actually offer that? What does it look like on the site? That is the core of today's conversation. So we're saying create custom, current texture pack is displayed, and then for each tile, you would not have them laid out like this. This would be a thing of the past now. You would just have each tile type listed out and what its current texture is, and then an edit button, I guess. Name of the tile, the dimensions of the tile, and an edit button. I just realized, are the dimensions on this page? Then I was just dumb and looked right past them. Yeah, they're. Oh no, it's not, because this is like the full size of the PNG, not the actual tile itself. Yeah. Is the future of texture packs staying in the same style of image as it currently is? Okay, never mind, you just answered that line. An edit button, and then what does the edit button do? Edit button opens a what? What does it open? An editor, I guess. With the opens an editor of a canvas, sorry. And the canvas is the size at the pixel perfect size, sorry. Size of that element. There is a pixel perfect checkbox enabled by default. If disabled, the canvas expands to 40 by 40. And a warning that the physics of the game do not honor the texture pack or something like that. I think if you want to just give people, here's this 40 by 40 phase you can draw. Here's a superimposed line that is pixel perfect. Draw whatever goes. I think that would work. My concern is that, does that line, like, do they think they have to fill in the line, or do they know that they have to fill up to the line? I guess you could just include that in a description here. Versus offer the 40 by 40 with no checkbox and a line around the pixel perfect image. Let users decide to fill it in or not. Or the other way you go with it is say, screw pixel perfect stuff. You're going to force them to be pixel perfect. If you don't want it to be pixel perfect, you have to go through the other process and you've accepted your fate, kind of thing, which is also fine. Do not allow non-pixel perfect. Only offer the required size. Let users upload 40 by 40 images, non-pixel perfect, as seen now, if they want to. And that would be fine as well. So we don't have to pick one of those now. Those are the three choices that we could follow. But basically they get that pop-up, and then they can just select a color, and they can select a pixel. And I don't think that that's too much to ask of people, because there aren't that many pixels in each image. The hard part is figuring out where to actually put those pixels. And if you're giving them the outline so they know, I think that that solves most of the problem. And so you would also want the ability to pick from a preset list of, so like the edit button is good, but you would also want them to be able to bail themselves out. So say maybe I was on the texture pack editor and I made my whatever and I'm like, wow, this actually looks awful. I hate this so much and I don't ever want this. I actually would like to go back to using the sniper PNG for my boost. I want to be able to pull that in and use that as my base, and then I can edit that and make whatever tweaks I want to it and then be done. So maybe I like I said, I like the sparkle. I like the ball on sparkle, but I don't like that little white thing. I'd want to be able to start from sparkle and then make my little edits and then call it done and be good to go without having to rebuild the entirety of that ball with just not that same corner. I think that makes sense. Keep the line even when it's off so you have a reference. Yeah, I think that's fine. Allow, or not, instead of edit button, next to the edit button, I don't know what to call this. Start from other pack. Needs better name. Option. Opens the editor, but with a pre-filled texture based on another texture pack. Mostly worried about how to allow people to draw walls. Why does that worry you? I feel like walls are pretty straightforward. It's just a square with a white border. Like it's like a lighter border on the edge. And some people like texture packs that don't have those lines at all. Like, boom, Starlight. There's no lines between, like these are just dark tiles. How they interact with each other? Maybe I'm misunderstanding the question, but they don't interact with each other. They just go next to one another. The lines that you see are part of the texture pack. Those lines are built in. Like the lighter lines, that's part of the texture. You mean the gap here where there's no line between these ones, but there is a line between these ones? The wall blob. I think that, I don't think that what you're describing is a problem. I just want to make sure I'm understanding it correctly. So you're saying that like right here, this is just a straight shot between all the tiles. There's no line between these tiles. It just shows all of them together, but then this ends and there's a white line here. That's what you're describing? Oh, I see what you're saying now. Because the right side of this wall tile and the right side of this wall tile are not the same thing. I would have to look at the renderer to see how we do that, but I think the very, very easy solution is that when tiles are bordering a tile of the same type, you have one rendering option, and when they're bordering tiles of a different type, you have a different rendering option. I think that's mostly how it works now. I would have to look into that, but that is probably not an issue. Yeah, we might have to, they might have to be given multiple options, and you could say like use for all kind of thing. Gosh, I know there's a better answer to this. It has something to do with this image here. The reason it exists like this is to solve the problem that you're addressing. Not all of this is actually used. It's only symmetrical to make it look nice. I think like part of it has all of the information that the renderer needs, but to your point, players would need to make, so you wouldn't just make a 45 tile. You would make a 45 tile and a 45 tile that is against a different tile here, and a 45 tile against a different tile here. Like you have to re-render that 45 in multiple ways. So I think the actual answer to that is that you have multiple tiles for each tile. So there's not just one 45, there are 3 45s for each of the, so I'm gonna say it one more time from the start. There are 3 different types of a 45-degree tile. There's a 45-degree tile not bordering anything on its far sides. There's a 45-degree tile that is bordering something on one side or on this side or on both sides. And so you would need to do each of those separately so that you know what they look like when they are together versus when they are alone. So that is an addressable problem, but it is something that we should be noting in the spec here. So this would be down here. For wall tiles that border or might or might not border another tile. Yes. For wall tiles that might or might not border another wall tile, each of them would need to have 3 separate renders for, well, I guess 1 for each face. Have an additional render for each face. Oh gosh. Yeah. Render for each face of that tile, which could be adjacent to another wall tile. Think 45s. They have a different border when against a 90 than when against a floor tile. Boom. Okay, that's a really good note. Thank you, Grant. What else? What else? What else? We're almost done here. Talked about this already. That's integrated. Import custom. We'd have all of those options ready. Splats are kind of a mess, but you just give them a 40 by 40 and say do whatever you want kind of thing. A lot of players like to use just transparent splats these days. Oh, that's right. Portals have multiple images and boosts have multiple images because it's a loop. Like it plays through these 4 images on a loop, and that's why it looks like they're making that shape as you go. So we would need to have each individual tile also be its own image, that makes sense. Like you would have the pop-up, and it would just have all 5 states of the boost. So for multi-state, images, all frames can appear at once. For active and 1 inactive frame for boosts. And again, for 99% of people, they're just going to take something that already exists, but you want them to have the ability to edit it if they want to. That's all it is. Because we're not going to be adding in new boosts, most likely. That's probably a pretty static thing. But it's really the wall tiles that are the biggest thing people want. Okay. I actually feel like that's a decent starting point for a spec. Anything else you can think of, Grant? Not particularly. I can tell this is not a topic people are very interested in. we lost everyone as soon as this started. But that's okay. Important stuff isn't always fun. TLDR. Oh, Bambi's here. So Bambi, we're looking at an integrated texture pack spec, trying to figure out. I think I should start this conversation from the long-term goal. The long-term goal is adding new tile types in. One of the biggest barriers right now to adding new tile types is the, I guess, breadth of texture packs that we currently offer, and the limitation that if you added in a new texture pack or new tile type, if you brought in a new tile type, anybody who's playing the game with a texture pack that is not a default texture pack would not have the ability to have that tile. So maybe they are playing with one that they made by themselves and they like it, but we add in a peg tile, like a shape of a button, but it's a wall. And we say, okay, the peg tile that we added is in the default texture pack. It looks like this, but it's in a wall texture. And now everybody just has that peg in that texture on their screen, and maybe it looks terrible with their texture pack. So that limitation is part of the reason we haven't been able to add new tile types, because we don't have any way to render them properly for all the players in the game without going through and updating every single texture pack that has ever existed or that is currently being used. And that wouldn't even cover the players who use custom ones of their own. So the solution that we're currently working on is a little bit more complicated, but it's an integrated texture pack builder in the site. And yes, granted, probably would not be the highest priority thing. We're just kind of getting things set up for whenever they happen in the future. But another tab that allows you to make your own texture in a pixel perfect format for a new tile type, so that we can still add in new tile types, force everybody to have that ugly whatever, but if they don't like it, it's much easier for them to go to their profile, go to their texture packs, and then edit that texture to look the way that they want it, or to have it be integrated in or match the rest of their texture pack, if you will, instead of having to go through the process of waiting for somebody to upload a different one or making their own in an editor and then uploading it to Imgur and then bringing that Imgur link into TagPro. It's just too many steps. It's too high a barrier of entry to allow players to customize their textures. So we were just talking through what you would actually need, and it's in front of me now, I can keep it up for a moment. What would you actually need to offer to players so that they could do that if they needed to, which would allow us to then explore new tile types with much better community reception, I think is where it would go with that. Bring map making in-house is, yeah, that'd be much better in terms of short-term priorities. I think that's a thing that that and Fortunate Maps both need to be integrated before we can really be serious about something like this. But Fortunate Maps likes to keel over. Yeah, it's definitely, there's room for improvement, we'll say, with that for sure. Making maps by hand is, yeah. Is there any way to share stuff you've created for the textures? Yes, I think so. Yeah. I think that what would happen there is if somebody makes a new tile for a certain texture pack, we could add that to the default. And I said before that you'd want, where did it go? Start from other texture pack. I think that as soon as people had stuff that was good, they could submit it, and then we could integrate that with this start from other pack thing, so people can go to their profile and they could say, okay, I want to make my own, or let me see what the other ones people have made are, and they can pick one that works for them and use that as a starting point. I think there's definitely some middle point between those two ideas that would work for most people, because you don't want every single person to have to make their own. Like you're saying, that would be a thing that a lot of players wouldn't be interested in. But yeah. All right, I think I've successfully bored enough people with this one. Bambi, any thoughts before you see the end of the stream here? Trying to get glass marble out of the Flare Factory. Glass marble is very much in the Flare Factory right now. We had a big conversation about the upcoming shop flares. I met with a couple people this last week. We've been dividing the shop flares into categories in terms of how much people are going to want them, so that we can price them accordingly with the rest of the shop. I keep doing this. I don't know what this is supposed to mean. Just so we can have like the highly coveted flares, and then you're like your mid-tier flares, and then your kind of your common flares that anybody might take, so that you can get those really easily. You have to work a little harder to earn, and then you have to work a while to earn those top flares. And getting all that set up has been a big focus of me this week. Are you going to make it like TP Themer, or does TP Themer have some sort of flaw? So TP Themer works great for mixing and matching existing texture packs. It does not have any ability to make your own texture pack. So if you wanted to make a custom tile type, TP Themer would have to do the same thing. It would have to have that new tile type for every single texture pack. It's the same barrier that we have with the site right now. We don't want to have to go through 40 different texture packs and make a peg tile type for every single one of these that looks good and that works, and then re-render and re-upload all of those tiles. It's too much work on the scale that we're trying to work with. If we added 5 new tile types, you're talking about a couple hundred hours minimum of work just to get those new tiles added, versus setting up a custom texture pack creator. you can make 1,000 of them and it's the same amount of work on our side. It's a little bit more on the community side, but it allows a lot more freedom at the same time on the community side. So it's a trade-off that I think is worth taking. Kaiser is going to want to know where the hot dog flare is at. I cannot comment on that at this time. Sorry. All right. We just hit 90 minutes. I think I've waffled enough about this. I'm going to call it there. As I mentioned before, I don't think holding on to these texture packs is worth the stress. You must let go. What does that mean? You let go. You mean like force people to have a texture pack that we pick for them? More will be made. That's not the problem. You're missing the problem if you think that it's a making. No. When players come to the site to play a game and they join the game, they expect it to look a certain way. If you have these random shapes in the wrong color that show up, it's going to be very confusing. That's the problem. It's not that people won't make fixes to these things. Yeah, I'm winding down. I'm out of here. If you want to talk about that more, baby, feel free to DM me. Anybody else who has questions, again, that form response, you can fill those out. It's in the pins here. It's also in the description on YouTube. And I will talk about it on stream. Like I said, we're looking at a release sometime in the next 2 weeks, probably one more stream before that goes live. A bigger issue is they wouldn't even see elements that exist. That would also be a problem, Moosin, yes. But we could enforce a default. But yeah, I've gone on long enough about this. So, thank you all for tuning in. Sorry for the unconventional topic this week. We'll get back to some more traditional stuff next week. And hope those in the Northeast and the South are okay with the snow over the weekend. But enjoy it otherwise. And I will see you all later.